This episode of Radcast Outdoors is brought to you by PK Lures, Bow Spider, and High Mountain Seasonings.
Fish on! Hey, Radcast is on.
Hunting, fishing, and everything in between. This is Radcast Outdoors. Here are David Merrill and Patrick Edwards.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Radcast Outdoors. I'm Patrick Edwards.
I'm David Merrill.
It's good to have everybody back on the show with us. We've got a fun guest today, somebody who I really enjoy hanging out with and talking to on her podcast and radio show as well. Charene, it's good to have you on the show today. So thanks for stopping in.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of having you both at the radio station, and now I get to be on the flip side in the hot seat myself, and I'm not used to it. So I apologize if I, no, it's great to be here, and I look forward to talking about our topic today.
Yeah, so for the people who don't know, Charene is an avid fly fishing angler who travels quite a bit and pursues a whole bucket list of species, and utilizes, public and private land. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but tell us about just real quick, just some of the cool places you've been in the last year or so, and, some of the favorite species you like to catch.
Yeah, without blowing up any spots, I will for sure. A couple of them I won't mention, but Alaska, Belize, California, a couple of the spots that I've trekked to outside. It's not normal that, we're going to California. Normally they're visiting us. And so I thought, you know what, we got to maybe do the reverse here and go down and, utilize some of their good fishing. So those are some of the places I've been. Of course, all the areas in the Northwest and the Rockies are my favorite personally. So if I can choose to stay home, I do for the majority, but traveling for fly fishing is my main passion. And so fishing and traveling is great, but right here is even better. So
we live in a pretty good state for catching fish and getting out in the wild. So what would be one of your favorite species to target with a fly?
I got kind of hooked on the saltwater, a bit. I've been to Florida a few times and then Belize this last year. And, I fly fished a couple other, warmer states too, as well for saltwater. I haven't got a tarpon. I went and chased permit in Belize. I got skunked on the permit. When I went down to Belize, they said, this is the windiest it's ever been. Did you bring that from home with you? I
Possibly.
said, I think it does follow us like a little tornado. And so the permit fishing wasn't on key for me there. So permit, tarpon, redfish, another one that I'd really like to. So yeah, I guess I just talked about loving being in, the freshwater, but I got kind of addicted to the saltwater, and it's something I haven't done enough of.
So how'd you get your start in fly fishing?
I just had a desire to fly fish. I worked with some old timers that fly fished a lot, wanted nothing to do with taking me fly fishing. It's a young whippersnapper. I was 19 years old, and I really had this desire, and it took me like 2 or 3 years to find somebody that would actually take me out. And I was actually hosting a sports show, an outdoor expo, and they were doing a fly casting competition. And so I announced it for the folks who were competing. And at the end, I decided I wanted to try it myself, and I did pretty good, and I really felt comfortable, and I liked it, and I loved when I felt that line zing out, and that was the first time. And then the fly shop actually was like, hey, for hosting this, you did good on your cast. We're going to take you out to the Missouri, which is one of the best trout fisheries. It goes neck and neck with the Green River on fish per mile. It's in Montana, and so they took me there for 2 days, got me hooked. And so I always promote folks, if you're getting into fly fishing, much like hunting, you don't want people to have a completely, terrible experience where they won't get into it. And that's what we talk a lot about with kids too. You want them to have that good experience. And so get a guide, you're almost guaranteed to get put on the fish. Whether you catch them or not is the other question. But yeah, that's how I got into it. Long story long.
Long story long.
I like it.
I like part of the sentiment you said is, there's a steep learning curve to horse training, fly fishing, I don't know, big game hunting, all of it. There is definitely, there's just so much to learn. And by hiring a professional and going, Flaming Gorge, lake trout, right?
Oh man, yeah.
You could spend a lot of trips, a lot of weekends just trying to figure out where fish are, or you can pay a guide, hop in his boat. He's going to run you out to the spots that he's already been producing fish. So there is something said to that. the other piece of it is though, don't go back to his spot next weekend with your own boat and be.
Yeah. And don't ever GPS anybody's spots.
Yeah.
Up in Alaska, they were talking about people doing that when they visit.
Yeah.
They get a guide for a day and then they think they can go out and rent a boat, the next day, and they're watching because, that big screen on those Alaska boats are telling you everything, and if you know what they're saying, you know where to go. And they'll have people say that put their phones like sneaking stuff, like dropping pins and stuff.
Let's go here, let's go there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hours of time, especially in the hunting realm of trying to, just manufacture those spots, I guess.
I feel like I don't agree with what I said when I said get a guide for fly fishing or gear fishing. I suppose it would be the similar case too as well, like with the Flaming Gorge. But with hunting, man, it seems so much cooler when you harvest that animal, not having, an actual
DIY.
guide. I mean, some help is great. We all need help, especially when we're starting out. Me personally, I need a ton of help, but I feel like with hunting, it's just kind of one of those solo, maybe one friend things where you're not wanting to get a guide per se.
And by the way, congratulations on your first ever big game harvest.
Yes. It's 4 nights. Yeah. Just not too long ago.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's why I say it's just like, man, that if I didn't have help, I wouldn't have been able to do it, of course. But I feel like it just becomes more and more rewarding in hunting the more you do it yourself. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things. And fishing gets to be that way too, especially fly fishing. But at first, you don't want to be out there with a fly rod all day long, especially depending on the weather and not catching anything, because especially some folks, they won't go back. Yeah,
especially if you're a first time angler, because that's super discouraging. It's like, well, what am I doing here? You want to get bit. I mean, that's one of the keys to the whole thing is getting bit by something and keeping your interest piqued. But
that's there's an interesting correlation between my fishing background, my hunting background, right? And I see a lot of people, whereas I can speak for Patrick, is he doesn't like to dead stick fish. I don't like to dead stick fish. And by that, I mean, put a worm in a bobber and sit there and wait. No, thank you, right? Part of what allured me at 11, 10, 12 years old to fly fishing was just the rhythmic movement of the rod, right? I didn't catch a ton of fish. We went and caught mostly brookies, right? And but there's a piece to that where in fly fishing specifically, you can tie the lure. You have a very involved role of presenting that lure. And then, guys get into it to where they're actually even building their own fly rods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting as close to involved with harvesting that fish. It's not trying to throw any shade on bait casting and bait fishing. I do it all the time, and I'll use a rifle, I'll use a bow, I'll use a fly rod, I'll use a bait rod. Whatever's going to work that day is I'm not prejudiced.
You're just an all around outdoorsman, yeah.
Yeah, but there is something to the bow hunting and the fly fishing that is a little more involved.
Definitely.
Just feels a little more. I can't articulate it. You know what I'm saying.
It's like primitive,
it's more
like
primitive.
Yeah, definitely. And we get in touch with our primitive side a little bit more.
Well, and you have to be so in tune to what you're doing, right? Like, so on a fly cast presentation, you have to pay attention to every single thing that you're doing. Just like if you're bow hunting, your stock and approach, everything has to be perfect. You have to pay attention to what's going on. Although one of the cool things about fly fishing is you can make a terrible looking cast and still catch fish.
I was just going to say, you can get pretty lucky sometimes, depending on the hatch.
Yeah.
If there's some good feeding going on, sometimes you don't. You can tie some butt end, which for those of you that don't know is really thick line that so you're not even going to matter. The fish isn't going to care because it's just eating. So much. I've been on salmon fly hatches that have been, you could tie 30-pound test on the end there and they're going to eat that thing no matter what. You're never going to lose a fish.
Right.
So that's what some of the guides do for the old timers.
Yeah. I have a friend that guides and says, you don't always have to have the prettiest cast, but you have to have the right drift, so as long as you have that fly presented in the drift properly, you're okay. Right. So the cast may not look great, but hey, if it gets in front of the fish the way it's supposed to, it's going to work.
But that being said, I traditional bow hunted before I harvested my first animal. And I'm telling you, I'm harvesting my first animal after years of traditional bow hunting with no success, no luck. I didn't put the time that was really needed. And by that, I put in time, but some significant time is needed with traditional bow hunting. And I sucked at it. And so I did pick up a rifle a couple of months ago, terrified as can be. I hate loud noises. That's why I've shot a trad bow. I love the no sound, the quiet, the primitive stalking, stealth. I love all of that about it. but no success if I want to harvest something for meat to feed. Food's becoming more difficult to find. It's kind of scary, and we're fortunate to live someplace where that's available. And so I picked up a rifle a couple months ago and I harvested an animal, and there's so much to all of that. It is difficult. It was a big challenge for me. So having gone from, being kind of like, well, I don't really care for guns, to now being like, oh my gosh, these things are amazingly cool. It's so scary and so incredible to be able to utilize one and harvest your own food and learn properly and learn the safety aspect of it, and just know how serious it is, but how incredibly addicting.
Now you've done it. Now you're going to want to keep going back every year and putting in for all the tags you can, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not there yet. No, but I'm not like David over here who's.
Well, there's a huge difference inviting friends over on a Friday, firing the barbecue up, and pulling out a package of, let's say I've got some mountain goat and some Sitka blacktail that's in the freezer right now, reserved for special occasions, right? And I get to present that, be like, yeah, this is some of the mountain goat that I just spent 3 weeks hunting in, kind of like your Belize trip. You get a fish, you bring it home, you show the picture, but then you're like, here, try some of this fish, right? Similar concept. Nobody gets excited of, hey, come check out the cow I bought at Walmart yesterday. We're going to cook it tonight. There's no emotion, no connection, right? Versus that clean protein that I put in the freezer is, it was backpacked out for miles at 100-pound pack, right? And it's
a lot of love in there.
There's a lot of love and a lot of care, but it's something I'm glad to do, and I'm excited to get to share that meal with that person, because in a way I'm getting to share the hunt with them.
Yeah. I want to give away my whole first harvest. I'm already like, how can I package this up? Who can I give it to for Christmas? Of course, I want to keep some for myself, but I'm just like, how can I make jerky? Which I found out because I thought I didn't have a dehydrator. I don't have an actual dehydrator, and I don't have a smoker. So I'm like, how can this person who doesn't have these things make this deer jerky that I want to make? Well, I found I can just like put a low setting on the oven and just put it in there too. So
follow the instructions on High Mountain Seasoning.
Yes, that's what I'm getting for sure.
Add a tablespoon of liquid smoke if you're going to do like hamburger, and that'll give you the smoky flavor that you would get from a traditional smoker. Yeah, like the oven's like 195, 175, maybe 200, not over 210 for
just watch it like a hawk.
Yeah,
because you don't want to dry it out.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I'm like you. I'm just really thankful to be able to share that. I think that's how I've known all hunters, really, most of them, to be sharing their bounty, sharing their harvest. And so, yeah, I've got a new renowned respect for that now.
And I want to get your take on that, just because there's the Hollywood take and the Disney World take of, hey, these hunters drive around, are just ruining the resource, just completely trampling on our public lands. And, now that you're one of us, right? I'm glad you are, but but do you see how wrong that interpretation of the hunting community is?
Oh, I got attacked my very first kill just a few days ago. My very first harvest, I should say. People didn't like me using the word kill, by the way. I'm new to this. I'm not sure what the right way.
Kill
my
harvest.
very first harvest,
you
I put my very
kill
first kill.
so.
I did kill it. That's frankly what I said. Yeah. I got my first, a lady I've known for a really long time was not pleased with the harvest and the kill. And I just kept thinking in my mind, and to explain to her, I ended up not engaging on Facebook because I just don't like doing that. So I erased it because people were going to attack her. Like, first off, where we live and where I'm from, mainly hunters and fishers, and it's a way of life and a way to feed their families. And so I know that they weren't going to take kindly to it. So I erased it. But I was thinking, first off, I hunted in an area that has one of the worst CWD populations in the world. The reason that the CWD is so prevalent is because these deer are congregating together. The population is, when it congregates together and increases, they end up having a CWD issue. So it's one of the worst in the world. And so how are we doing our part? Well, they need to regulate and harvest the animals so that they can test, not only that they can test, but that they can try to eliminate some of that congregation too. And so, I feel like that was kind of a big part of when I harvested that animal. I felt like I was really important in that area due to the numbers and the data that they've already got from that area. So, in another area, no matter what area it is, regulation of animals, if they get too populous, they get killed off from disease and other things like that. There's a number of things that cause an issue, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm just new too, so I'm like,
No, the biologists are actively working on that situation. You're 100% correct that we do have one of the worst outbreaks and death rates. And we had actually EHD, and then we had CWD. And EHD is, I'm going to butcher it, but it's hemorrhagic disease, and they bleed to death internally. And we had that first. They call it blue tongue. And then we've got this CWD, which is the chronic wasting disease. So you're correct, but think about if somebody would have hit the same deer you shot with a car. It's like, oh yeah, I hit a deer the other day. And it's not even oh, that sucks for you. Nobody says, oh, that sucks for the deer, right? But you go out and ethically, legally harvest an animal. You're excited about it. You're going to share it. You're utilizing all the protein, which, you haven't hired a hitman third party to go kill a cow for you. Your hands are quote unquote clean, right? Mm-hmm. No, with this deer, you had to get your hands dirty. And you know exactly what the process involves going from an animal living out in the field eating its dinner to it's now your dinner. And that process is not to be taken lightly by any hunter.
No, it's unique. It's very special. And I just still can't believe that I was a part of something that magnificent, and the fact that we're able to do that and to feed. I mean, like we talked about, finding food and being a single adult too isn't cheap either. So it's like that means a lot to me, the harvest that I'm going to be able to have just personally and financially. And that was a whole other side of explaining to people who don't really understand the whole hunting thing. It's like, well, you'll go get a half of a cow from somebody, and it's the same concept. You're getting it straight from the producer, and technically I am too, Mother Nature. You're
now farmer, rancher, butcher. You're now all of it.
I know. I got skin it. I'm processing it here coming up. So yeah,
I'm happy for you. I think it's really cool, and there's a lot of people getting into hunting, non-traditional hunters like yourself, and I think that that's important. And it's cool to hear this. People tell the story. They're like, oh man, because I can remember being a kid and doing it, but I think it's different as an adult.
Oh, and non-traditional adult. I'm in my 30s, and I've just harvested my first animal. It's awesome. Never grew up with any hunting or fishing, no outdoors background whatsoever, and I had this just strong desire, and I had to claw my way into a lot of things to be able to get some help, because I'll tell you what, you need it, especially as you become an older adult. You have so many weird obstacles and fears that you don't have as a kid. And so you definitely, I think, in my personal opinion, need a little bit more help sometimes. If you're in your 30s or maybe 40s and you're listening to this and you're like, I just want to hunt. Well, sometimes you need to find friends and resources to be able to do so, but it's going to take you a little bit, and it's going to probably, the learning curve's a little bit different than it would be when you're a kid with no fear and having it in your background, or kind of continually by your parents or grandparents. I do have a question, just because I think this is super topical right now. Back to the CWD. If my deer comes back, because it's in a mandatory test area with CWD, what do I do?
Supposedly it's non-transmissible to humans, and the disease is actually in the spinal and brain fluid anyways.
What if I don't think I hit the spine? So that should be good.
I would eat it. I mean,
I don't want to part with my first harvest. I want to give it and share it. And there are some people out there who have said if it has CWD, I wouldn't eat it. And so I'm like, the back and forth being the first time harvest, and in an area where the prevalence is high. Luckily, it was a white-tailed doe. I believe that those numbers are the lowest. So I'm kind of crossing my fingers. Yeah. Anyways, but so it's kind of such an interesting topic right now. It seems like
I would talk to your biologist about it. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is just talk to them.
I'm not gonna say that somebody should or shouldn't. I'll tell you what I would do. I'd eat it.
Okay. I have to think it's been probably done before many times, I would assume, just because of how I
guarantee it.
We weren't mandatory testing for a while, so I'm of the opinion I would eat it. So,
well, good. I value your opinion, and with all your expertise, and yours as well, Patrick. So it's just you have that first harvest, you don't even want to think about.
Oh, I know.
Not being able to utilize it, just because of the whole concept of me going out was to get food.
This portion of the podcast is brought to you by PK Lures. If you're like me, you're probably out on the water pursuing your favorite fish this time of year. Open water season is the most fun for me, and I always have PK lures in my tackle box ready to go for my fishing trips. Some of the ones that I would recommend for this time of year are the PK Spin-A-Jig. If you're a jig fisherman, it's a must-have. It adds extra flash to your jig. You can tip it with anything you want, and it is downright effective for trout, walleye, panfish, and bass. The other thing I'd recommend is if you like to troll, there's a lot of options for that as well. My kids and I have done really well on the Ridgeline crankbait this season. We've caught a ton of different trout and also a lot of walleye. So that's a great option as well. If you like to troll crawler harness type options, the PK Wobbler and PK Dakota Disc have always been a go-to bait for me. So you can check all these out and much more at pklure.com. Again, pklure.com. Back to the show.
So food access, that's kind of, I want to just switch gears a little bit. Obviously that access piece for fishing or hunting is pretty crucial. What are some ways somebody's new into hunting? Because that's probably one of the biggest barriers to entry in fishing and hunting is finding somewhere where you're actually going to be successful. And, if you're lucky enough to live here, we got enough public land. You just park your car and walk to where you don't see boot tracks and you'll be okay. But
Might take you a while.
It might take you a while. But let's hypothetically pick a different state that doesn't have the public land resource we have. What are some keys of that private land piece that will help somebody become successful?
Joining organizations, Ducks Unlimited, any other kind of, backcountry hunters and anglers are one. DU, though, does a ton with private land and landowners. And you would be surprised having a connection with that and volunteering what might open up or doors might open up. And that is the same for a lot of organizations. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation too. There's just a lot of resources.
Pheasants Forever,
Trout Unlimited. Of course, TU,
yeah.
Especially when they're doing habitat volunteer events and you show up to those. Yeah, it may take up your weekend. It may take your Saturday. But I'll tell you right now that I personally have received offers and invitations from folks that have had access or private ponds or something, that's just a different, interesting, a way to get fish, get, on land, get on water too as well. Another one, of course, is making that relationship, creating a relationship with a landowner, private landowner. If you're, looking on a map or something and you see, Wyoming Game and Fish has a bunch of information about landowners that will allow you to hunt or fish on their property, and they have certain details and certain times. First off, super crucial that we all respect that and follow the rules.
Respect the landowner.
Oh, because it's so important. And if we don't, then it's the saying, one bad apple ruins it for everybody. And it's really, really true. So following the rules, creating that relationship. I just was fortunate to be on some private land. I baked the lady a bunch of cookies. I'm coming over there to thank her with the landowner tag. She gets about $15. It's not much, but it's something for her. So I'm looking forward to being able to turn that in and give her some baked cookies. And who knows, maybe she'll invite me back.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if that's something. It's my first time really doing that for hunting. I've done it for fishing, getting local little goodies like high mountain seasonings and some stuff like that. And it goes a long ways, and you only end up spending like $30 or $50,
Yeah, and I can talk about it a little bit from a landowner perspective because I have people come and hunt whitetail off of my property, and you have the people that show that they, like if you bring a kid to my house and you have a plan and you're nice about it, I'm probably going to let you go back there and sit and wait for a whitetail to come out or something like that. But there's some that I've had that have been pretty disrespectful, and I have other friends, adjacent to me, they'll have people come out and they drive where they're not supposed to, or they cross over into an area they're not supposed to, maybe shoot the gun across the land in the wrong direction, which is super dangerous. So from a landowner perspective, it is pretty risky when you open up your doors to somebody else. And that's why the Game and Fish Access Yes program and some of those other things where you have landowners that are saying, yes, I'll allow people to come on. If you're an angler and there's water access, don't leave your worm containers, your beer bottles, all your junk down there on the bank, because that access, yes, is going to go away. Those landowners
pack
are
it
going
in,
to close
pack it out. No matter what you're doing, pack it in, pack it out. And, A big one, like you said, is driving, especially if we're talking private property, especially ag ground. Nobody wants their crops driven in. So, just where would you like me to park? Where can I access this? Please and thank you. Pack it in, pack it out.
When in doubt, leave it out. If you're questioning something and you don't know whether or not that landowner would be okay with that, do not do it. When in doubt, leave it out. It's important for the long term and the longevity of it. And it's hard to remember that when you're down there and you're excited. It really is. I understand you're fishing and, catching fish, especially if you're new to it or it's an area that you haven't been able to fish and it's got big fish in it or something. But it's important to always have that in, near the back of your head, that you don't want to make that decision yourself on somebody else's property.
Yeah, I think it goes back to like the idea of the platinum rule, which is treat others better than you expect to be treated. Like, if you could put yourself in that landowner's shoes of how would I want someone to treat my land if they were coming to fish or hunt, try to do better than even that. Look for a way to go above and beyond, like your idea of baking cookies. That's a great thing to do. It shows the landowner. I've been up since
5 a.m. doing that for.
Yeah, exactly. But it shows that landowner you really appreciate it. And I think that goes a long ways into developing a relationship that you can continue to do that.
Yeah, and I hope other people want to, try to create that relationship with folks there too. We live in a great place where, you don't necessarily need to, reach out to be able to hunt because of the public access, but it's nice to be able to have some of those options. And it's also just nice to be able to meet some of these folks that, are some people you probably would never encounter otherwise. And I think, to be honest, this lady let us hunt because it was two ladies. My friend let her know that I'm an older, lady, not older, but not older. Darn it, in my 30s. And I had never harvested an animal before, and I had tried, with a traditional bow. And the lady seemed, more keen on allowing me to come on because of that. It had a story to it. We had, a plan. We had, an execution if anything, happened. And I learned about what farmers do not like with gut piles, which I didn't know, you want to get that away from all of their field and all that kind of stuff, so that was really cool to be able to be in that instance where, my friend was teaching me, like, if, you get invited back to some place that has a field like this and stuff like that, you never leave this gut pile just in the middle here, you want to get it away because this is their working land. And it was just good to just get that, lesson and be able to remember that, that's a part of the respect is, some people get invited out and they don't know to do that. And now I do.
This portion of the podcast is brought to you by High Mountain Seasonings. It's that time of year. If you're fishing, you're out in the field, you're catching a lot of fish and you need some good fish brine to smoke up those trout fillets, you can go to highmountainjerky.com or HIMTNjerky.com. And it's also that time of year to stock up before hunting season. So if you need the absolute best jerky seasoning on the market, you can check out their jerky seasoning kits. They're very easy to do, no matter whether you're doing whole muscle meat or ground jerky. They've got everything that you need. If you want to cook fish, like on a pan-sear fish or cook duck or pheasant or whatever you're cooking, they have the seasoning for you. So again, go check out our friends at High Mountain Jerky. You can go to HIMTNjerky.com and check out all their different options. Now back to the show. And if you're a hunter, really pay attention to where you're shooting. There's cases every year in Wyoming where someone's shooting in an antelope and they shoot over the antelope and hit a cow or a piece of equipment or something like that, irrigation pipe. You really have to pay attention to what's on the backdrop. I mean, that's a general rule for hunters, but I think some people forget about that when they're on private property, is that landowner probably has a stack of irrigation pipe, especially where we live, right? Or might have a tractor back there or a shed or animals. So you have to pay close attention. And I always, if I'm going to hunt on someone else's land, I'm like, okay, tell me kind of what's around. Because I don't want to shoot into an area where I might accidentally hit something that you have. And most of them are like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And it's like, oh, I'm glad I asked because you don't know because it's not your ground.
Yeah.
This portion of the podcast is brought to you by the Bow Spider. If you haven't heard of the Bow Spider yet, you'll have to go to bowspider.com and see what it's all about. If you're a bow hunter and you want to go hands-free in the field, you really need a Bow Spider packing system. Out here in the West, we cover a lot of miles, and it's good to be able to put your bow on your back or on your side and get a little break from toting it around the field. The Bow Spider packing system has a lot of different options. You can use it in tree stands. You can use it on the headrest of your truck to transport your bow. You can put it on your pack and carry it around on your back. You can also put it on your side. So if you haven't checked it out, go to bowspider.com and check out the Bow Spider. You can also go to YouTube and type in Bow Spider and go to their channel. They have how-to videos to show you exactly how to use their products. Again, you can check out the Bow Spider by going to bowspider.com. Again, that's bowspider.com. Now back to the show.
No, these are all good points. You know, like you said, keep the gut pile area clean. I've come across a lot of other hunters where they've left their gloves, right? They use disposable gloves. It's like, you know, great, you got it not in the middle of the field and didn't leave a mess, but you still left some garbage that's going to be out there. So pick that up. But one thought, Patrick, is my father-in-law's shop has a bullet hole about 12 feet high in the east wall, and the west wall has one about 4 feet high. Somebody was in the backfield on the neighbor's property shooting at a deer, clearly missed, but obviously there was a 40 by 60 shop in the backdrop, and if somebody had been in there, you know, it's things like that. So back to the basics.
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
That's why I had so much fear too with a rifle, was it's not to be taken lightly.
Well, the bullet goes a long ways, and I have a neighbor who had a picture window blown out by a hunter. I mean, that's their house. That's where they live. You talk about rattling your cage. I mean, that's a big deal. So yeah,
that's an easy way to not get folks invited back and to not have anybody invited back, frankly.
Yeah.
Or the next time somebody knocks on the door, hey, can I go shoot some whatever in your field? It's like, no, last time we let somebody, we had a window shot out or a cow shot or a tractor shot or gate pipe or maybe they just target practiced on a wellhead, right? Something.
The other thing too, shut the gates. Like that's a big one. Like, well, that I hear all the time.
The gates the way you found them.
Yeah, exactly. So
100%.
if you open a gate to access a pasture, close it, because
not when you're done.
Now,
drive the vehicle through and close the gate.
Yeah, because a lot of times they'll have cattle there, and maybe they go through that area to go to the water or whatever, and then they exit the property, and then that landowner
you may not even see the cattle. They might be down, but those things, all livestock know. They got like GPS. They're like, oh, gate down, let's go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the least fun for any landowner or rancher too. So you're not making their day any better when that happens.
And there's a huge liability to that, because let's say, like around here, there's a lot of Black Angus cows. Well, you leave a gate open, they end up on the highway. Somebody hits one of those at night, kills somebody. That's a huge liability for that landowner. So, that's what I think a lot of people don't remember, is that when you come onto their land, you're falling under, they have insurance on that land, hopefully. But they're taking a risk by having you there. Like, it's not just, and if they say no, there's probably a reason, right? Like, they probably have a legit reason to say no, but they are definitely taking a personal risk by allowing you to hunt.
I'm so thankful that lady did that, because you're right. She didn't have to do that. And it was, a risk. But I think, just having learned a lot of the hunting basics with a rifle from somebody who's just, so into safety and importance of ethics too, which was so important for me, it helped a lot. But I was thinking to myself, I was like, there's a lot of people who shouldn't be hunting, which is terrifying to me, because the population's increasing. There are more and more hunters every single year, and kids who are becoming of age. And just sometimes I think about, no offense to some folks that I know, but I'm like, you should not have this high powered rifle. And, because it is very serious. You have to, and you have to really honor, in my opinion, the animal, because you're taking a life, and everything has to be done at the right moment, at the right time, with safety in mind and humans in mind, and anything, in your behind scope as well. And if you don't kill the animal and just wound it, that's another thing that just terrifies me. I don't ever want to, just leave an animal wounded.
No.
So something that doesn't get talked about, you do this long enough, rifle, bow, trad, compound, crossbow, eventually something's going to go south. You do it long enough. It's just the law of averages. But, I've shot 3,000-4,000 arrows this year out of my bow, practicing so that I am within my lethal ethical distance when it's time to take that shot. And you'll get, as you do this more and more, to where, and I've seen it or a lot with female hunters, less so with male hunters, of, hey, that's not quite the great shot yet. And a female hunter will be like, okay, I'm not taking it all, right? It's like, no, just wait. The animal's going to take 2 or 3 more steps, and he'll present you with the proper shot. And a lot of times the younger male hunters are just a little more gung-ho and letting lead fly. So I do have to give kudos to a young man that I packed his bull out here a week ago. He's 12, harvested a really nice 6-point bull.
Nice.
Early in the morning, he had a very small elk, and there were some other hunters about 800 yards behind his elk that was at like 250. He opted not to shoot because there's other people in his sight picture. Great job on him, great restraint. You know, 2 hours later, he was rewarded with a really nice elk, and he made a couple lethal shots. He got a little excited after the first couple lethal ones and had to calm down. And so, you know, there's those things, and it's, as an adult onset hunter, I think people need to just ask questions, right? Like you said, 12-year-olds are like, oh, this is the way we've always done it, or this is why dad, and sometimes they pick up on things. I mean, I took the 3-year-old doe antelope hunting a week and a half ago, and you speak about gun safety. I'm like, okay, once we got into go time, I made him hold on to my bino strap as I was army crawling up, right? He's 1.5 feet tall. He doesn't have to army crawl. You know, I have to army crawl, but I didn't want him getting in front of the gun while I'm paying attention to the animals. So being able to feel that little tug on my bino strap, now I know he's right beside me. He's got his little earmuffs on. Okay, are you ready, bud? Yep. He's right there. And he got to witness. He wanted to go. The whole reason we went on that doe antelope hunt was for him, right? He's been hounding me. But there's some of those things. And if we didn't get one, that's okay too. It's a doe antelope hunt, right? So, but as that adult onset hunter, what are some things you've seen, maybe some questions you've just had that you had to ask that I guess as an adult would be a little bit hard to articulate, right? To another human being, like, hey, what do I do with the meat, or what do I do to gut it?
I mean, skinning it, processing it. I mean, that's a whole like, oh my gosh, how do I find the grain to cut jerky? How do I follow the tendon or the meat? Like I went through anatomy and but it's totally different for a deer. What was that noise after I shot? Well, it was you shooting. It was that noise that when you hit an animal. I've never hit an animal. I've been shooting metal. So I've been ting, 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 all my practice shots, ting, 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 ting. And all of a sudden I hear this boom.
Sounds like a thump of a drum.
Yes. Yeah. And so, what was that? And learning not to prairie dog, because even though I don't follow my arrow, traditionally when I have hunted archery, for some reason with the gun, I'm instantly, which moves your gun, by the way, it's not good to do, but I'm instantly wanting to look outside of the scope to see what's happening, like a curious.
Nope,
I'm
stay
so
on
curious
target.
anyways, but stay on target.
Reload. Yeah. And hopefully you have a spotter that will tell you need to shoot again.
Right.
Or, because I've seen that happen way too many times. Elk hunters are like, take their first shot and they're expecting the animal just flop over and be done, right? And we all expect that. But to get the gun reloaded, to stay on the gun, and to get back on target. And same thing archery. I've seen people prairie dog with archery. You're like, one arrow goes off and the animal runs out there 10 yards, turn around, look back like, what's going on? It's like, if you'd been reloading and drawing your bow again, we could have.
Ready.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one of them. I've had so many things, David. It's just been, I have a terrible fear of guns. So I've gone down this path of fear every time I go practice shooting. But like you said, I've been practicing this summer and just a few days before I went and harvested that animal. But if I didn't do that, then I wouldn't be ready, and it wouldn't be ethical to go out hunting, right? So you have to practice. Even if you're scared, you have to practice. And so when practicing, I had, just all kinds of questions, like, what are the crosshairs, like things that might be just completely, second nature to some people, or what's that little dot down there, and just, using a rangefinder properly and better too is key, because not only do I look forward to, hunting, but I look forward to helping, alongside being that person that's got the binos and the rangefinder, because that's what I needed when I went hunting, because she was ranging for me and it was at 270 and I wasn't quite comfortable. Like you had mentioned, I'd shot at 300 and I did okay, but she just wasn't right. And so I waited and I was really shaky too. So I had to take a deep breath, and it wasn't working. I actually had to stabilize myself a little bit on her because I was shaking so bad. So it wasn't right to take a shot like that. So I had to wait, and then I finally calmed down just enough, and she turned just the right way, and she dropped right there, but I blacked out. I either blacked out from adrenaline or prairie dogged and blacked out, or who knows what I did. But she was on it spotting, and she's the one that told me it dropped right away, and I felt better because I was like, okay, A, I know I didn't wound it. B, she was there for me because I wasn't capable of, because of my excitement and adrenaline she knew that anyways. And I didn't have to track it. It didn't run into anybody's private land across the way. I mean, there was just all kinds of things that it was a benefit for. And I think waiting is what did that.
Well, Charene, I'm on the same side of the coin. I much prefer to be the caller or the observer, because then all the trigger pressure's not on me, right? when you can remove that, it's like, okay, well, either this person's going to make a great shot or not. I just get to be a witness and get to be here and have fun. But
that's exciting too.
If it ever gets to where it's not exciting, it's probably time for that person to hang it up. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and it's still, taking my 3-year-old out and shooting a doe antelope. That's not a trophy hunt.
Yeah. Helping a 12-year-old take a 6-point out. That's
it's
excitement.
Awesome. It's fun getting to be part of. Both those young men are going to remember, oh, that's the guy that took me, and, we went and did that. So I'm thankful to get to start to truly pass it on, right?
Thanks for doing that too. And outside of your family too, I assume you're talking about as well. And I talk a lot about that to some folks. There's a lot of women's things out there, and there really are. If you look for them, you can find them. I don't find a ton of things for young men who don't have, a father who hunts or a grandfather who hunts, and they've just never been exposed to it like myself. There's not as many of those publicized resources. So it's great to word of mouth it and to have, your connections and your friends in the community that you're able to help that have kids.
Well, we're like 5% of the population, right? And I really think 50% of the people are really indifferent to hunting, maybe even 70%. There's only 5 or 10% that are adamantly anti-hunting, not going to do it. And there's 5% that are pro, I'm going to hunt till the day I die, right? So we do need to be careful of our image, social media, landowner, in the public, just the way we converse of the reverence we do have for this. Because, I mean, it is, you see all the totems in this building here, right? And it's, a lot of people think that that's some sort of bloodlust, glutton, maybe just look at me, how big am I? And those are accomplishments. Those are major life accomplishments. And I want to remember that animal that time, once the meat's gone, once the memory of the trip's gone, all I really have left is kind of a photo and a mount. And I can tell you, hey, I went and did this, and I went there, and anymore, I want to go to every continent on every species there is.
You should do it.
I don't know if I'll get quite that good, but I've been going.
I have faith you'll get there because you have been going, and I have that same dream with fishing, but now obviously I've got an addiction now, and I haven't been able to sleep much since the night before I hunted, for my first time with a rifle. And so I know that I'm definitely into it because I haven't been able to sleep. And last night I did sleep for a little bit, but I woke up dreaming of that doe and the whole hunt and everything. So I'm sure it gets even more addictive as you start to travel the world.
And now you're hooked on hunting, not just fishing.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I can hang with the hunters like we talked about. It's intense. And
you build up to it though.
Yeah. I'll learn. I want to, I'm going to get a little bit into trapping, just a little bit, because I want to learn. I hear there's nobody really who knows animals better than trappers, some of those, intense trappers, and they have to set those traps just exactly right and know exactly how that animal is going to move. And so I'm going to just learn a little bit more about that. And I think it's important to, I don't want to get spoiled too much because I don't deserve that. So I don't want to try to beg my friend who, the people in our lives that are such great hunters and have really worked for it. You got to do some work yourself. So I'm going to try to do what I can myself. And I'm looking at a new skinning knife I'm going to get. So just adding a couple of things to my catalog too, I think is going to be my focus.
And I think it's good that you have that perspective of earning it. I think unfortunately, a lot of the anglers that try to interact with me, they don't really want to go out there and learn it and kind of figure it out. They just want me to show them how to do everything. They
just want your fish finder, man.
And they want my spot, right? And that's super disrespectful to me. Cause I'm like, well, I've spent a long time working on this and honing this skill and figuring out fish patterns and movements so that I could do this, and that part's kind of hard for me to swallow. So I don't know how you feel about that with fishing and maybe even hunting too, but what's your perspective on that? Like the attitude maybe somebody should bring if they're going to come to an experienced person to ask for help.
Oh, well, first off, it's hard to even, come to an experienced person and ask for help sometimes just because it's intimidating, I think first off for a lot of people too. So I think, realizing that they're probably not here to intimidate you first off. And so that's where I think, I think intimidation makes people act like jerks sometimes. I think when they get in the presence of some folks that, they probably trust, know what they're doing, but could be a little self-conscious in the grand scheme of things. I think that's when it happens. So just not being intimidated. And like the gal that I'm hunting with, she's like she's got the world record crossbow with an antelope and all these things, she travels the world as well. And you would think I would be intimidated by her, but I'm not. She never gives that off to me anyways, but I'm not intimidated by her. And I've come, and that's what she said to me. She's like, you've shown up with a great attitude and you're terrified of this. And you've shown up with a good attitude. But the reason I had the good attitude is because I wasn't intimidated. I think personally, intimidation can just, cause so many emotions and feelings especially when you're doing something like hunting and fishing is so cool. So many people want to do it. It's difficult. That's why not as many people are obsessed and traveling the world like David and my friend are, is because it's not easy. I mean, shoot a 370, right? Or Cape Buffalo or something, or, there's just so much to it. So just having a good attitude is important, but not being intimidated, I think for me personally, is because when I get intimidated, I start feeling a little sassier.
Yeah. And I like it when people come with some humility and just say, hey, I need help with this, and not just say, hey, where's your spot?
Yeah.
It's like,
it's important on us too, to be as the, because in fly fishing, I've been doing it a long time. I'm not, a novice at it either. So somebody comes to me, it's important I don't make them feel intimidated.
Yeah.
I want to, just be under the radar, not trying to be like, oh, I know everything about it, or you're doing this wrong and this wrong and this wrong,
Nobody likes the guy on the river or the field saying, well, you're just doing it all wrong and you don't know anything, and belittling people.
Yeah, there's got to be a name for that person. I need to think of it.
Frank,
yeah.
Sam, something. I don't know. I did have one thought. There was a very senior, very well-versed trapper that went to a family farm and taught a young boy how to catch fox on the farm, right? Showed him all the places, showed him how to set traps. And that guy every year brought in some of the most beautiful, best fox in the whole county. Finally, the farm got sold, and that guy who'd been bragging for years about how good a fox trapper he went had to go trap other land and couldn't hardly trap. The moral of the story is that old-time trapper had taken the time to learn his craft, to learn the animal. I mean, it'd be like taking Patrick here and sticking him on a different lake for walleye, right? It's going to take him a minute, but Patrick's going to go, okay, well, they should be using this structure. They're going to be this depth of water. This is this and this and that. And he's going to have figured the fish out to where he'll get on fish pretty quick. Doesn't matter what reservoir he's on. Give him 3 days. He's going to put you on fish, right? That's because Patrick knows how the walleye are utilizing the landscape. That trapper knew how those fox were utilizing the landscape. If somebody just gives you the coordinates and gives you the lure and says, here, go here, and you don't know why those fish are there, what is it, pre-spawn, is it during spawn, is it post-spawn, are they migratory? Same thing with antelope, same thing with elk, same thing with any species. I don't care if you're hunting or fishing, learning how that animal is interacting. Why is it feeding on that streamer? Why is that fish here at that point in time using that structure? If you can learn and start picking up on and having that mindset of, because every time I go in the elk woods, specifically every time I go in the elk woods, the elk will teach me something. Now, whether my eyes and ears are open to learning it is a different question. But you get enough elk encounters under your belt, you'll be like, oh, 9 out of 10 last elk encounters, when stuff goes sideways, they use this as their escape. Oh, stuff's going sideways? I'm going to beat them to their escape spot. And you show up and you're like, oh, look who's here in front of you, already knowing
Isn't
what
that
you're
the best?
doing. Oh, it's part of the fun. It's part of the game, right?
Yeah.
And I love hunting and fishing that involves deception, right? And it's not because feel like I'm deceiving the animal. It's because when I get to turkey call or elk call or put a crankbait in or throw a topwater fly and twitch it just right to trick that animal into thinking that I'm interacting with it in its natural habitat.
Yeah, and now trick an animal that has intense senses too.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's
now I'm part of
awesome.
nature. I'm no longer an observer. I'm there. I'm an active participant, and that's what's so exciting. I mean, duck hunting. Take a couple kids duck hunting, throw some decoys out, and actually get to blow the call, and you see the ducks respond and cup their wings and come in. If you're just jump shooting a creek, it's a great way to get some ducks, and ducks are good to eat somewhat. I prefer antelope over ducks, but
Depends on what the duck eats, right? Or where they're at, I think. I don't know.
I think carp and ducks are on the same the same plane of
Dave's not a duck
edibility.
Fan. Yeah.
It's okay. I'd rather have pheasants, Charene.
Oh yeah, pheasants always great. I had some great duck the other day. Some friends made it, but they made it on a little like baguette, and it was good. But I think it had been eating corn. I don't know. Again, I'm not sure if the different areas of ducks or what.
So again, something I've been telling everybody, because we had Hank Shaw on this program. Go check out Hank Shaw's books. He's got Buck Moose, Pheasant, Quail, Cottontail, and Hook, Line, and Supper. And he'll teach you how to cook just about anything. In fact, even carp. Seth Ewing, who helped out on that podcast because David was out of, I think you were in Africa.
I'm always out somewhere, guys.
Anyway,
I love
picked up on the theme
I'm
yet.
so glad you're here for this, though.
But he learned how to do carp, like a smoked carp recipe, and it was actually really, really good. And so, I mean, yeah, I don't know. You got to just try some new things. I'm expanding my horizons. I actually smoked a sucker today. I'm going to see how that tastes. I don't know. That might not be very good, but hey,
we're going to
try it.
We're going to cook a spiny dogfish next time we go to AK.
We are.
Nice.
Yeah,
yes.
we caught some of those little sharks, you know. And,
on the spit there.
Yeah, so we were well, I actually messaged Hank Shaw and I was like, hey, can you eat these things? He's like, yeah, but you got to like kill it immediately, get the skin off, get the guts out, all those things, because their skin like secretes like a urea into the meat if you don't. And so that's why people are like, oh, they taste bad. Well, he said they make great fish and chips if you process them properly. So we're going to try it.
That was a weird question I had when skinning the deer. All I was worried about was cutting the urea bag, you know, I'm like, I don't want to ruin this. Like I just was freaking out about it because also the glands in the leg too. I was like, I don't want to cut those.
You really don't want to. And a good butcher is a good butchering process is going to produce a better protein. Mm-hmm. But the animal's already dead. It's not going to get any more dead. You can't mess it up too bad, right? And after a couple, you'll get on your, I did that last time. I don't want to, no, don't cut there. But you're not going to it's not going to be ruined to the point of it's no longer consumable. There's just going to be a slight flavor difference for sure. Yeah. And what you're talking about is you really don't want to get any of the gut fluids on your meat.
No.
There's 4 glands. Each leg has a gland. You really don't want to sever that gland and get those gland juices. And then on the back legs of almost all of your ungulates, they have scent glands, and it's on the hair. And you don't want to get that scent on your hands and then put on the meat because that's seasoning, but it's not a good seasoning.
That stuff stinks, man.
Yes.
That's awful. But I know you have to run
yes.
Because it's about that time, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and we'll do another one. We'll do something, more fly fishing related and kind of pick your brain on fly fishing, because I know that's your passion, but it's been fun talking about access and talking about your first
hunting too, especially with David. I know you're the professional, fisher of us, and
that's you
for fly fishing, but not all over angling. Just to be able to, even just as a greenhorn hunter, be able to just even chat with David too and yourself is great. So I hope somebody who's listening isn't an avid, hunter and doesn't know everything and felt like they were on, the same page with me on some of those, questions and thoughts. And I'm sure they were. But again, if you're trying to get into hunting or fishing, you need somebody to help you. Like that's just, I would never. The main part of my victory was my friend Cheryl.
Grab a mentor.
Yeah,
get a mentor.
Yeah, so get a mentor. They're not always the easiest to find if you didn't grow up in a household, and maybe your parents don't have a connectivity of friends that do that. But there are resources out there. There's a lot of projects that are getting started. There are just kind individuals too that are hunters or fishers that if you just bag, maybe one day.
I would say start with looking up where the next hunter safety class is. Get your hunter safety under your belt. That is the 101. That is the basics. You have to have it. And some of these questions that people may or may not know are gonna be addressed, right? The gate issue, safe shot distances.
I did
all
my
this
hunter
stuff.
safety so long ago, like that.
Yeah.
I feel like is that something too? It's like I didn't harvest an animal for so long after I got that.
It's good to have a quick refresher. A lot of times you can talk to your local Game and Fish and they'll just take you through real quick, like, hey, don't forget about these things. I mean, they're happy to do
Well, now
that.
I'm good now.
Especially your game wardens. Like, they're going to be more than happy to do that for you. So talk to them. But I do want to say, I think I picked up a really good suggestion from you today. I learned something, bake cookies for all these landowners. That if you're going to go ask for access, you better bake them cookies.
Bake cookies. Hey, that's the cookie guy. Yeah, we'll let him go fishing. That's the cookie guy.
You have
there's
to make
probably
good
no other cookie
cookies.
guy.
Yes, but the cookies have to be good.
They do, yeah. But no, just definitely having that relationship with them. The less we alienate them, there have been a lot of things in the news that have made landowners feel alienated, and a lot of big stories that have been in the public the last year or so. So if there's anything that we can do, it's not sitting there and thinking we need more public access or that we're better. It's utilizing the public access that we do have in the right ways and being respectful to that, and then harnessing those landowner relationships and bringing them back to wanting to allow hunters to harvest and to have a donation of maybe meat. I would like to maybe bring this lady some jerky too, if I ever can actually make it, if I do it right. I could screw it up, but I want to try to make jerky with the dough. And maybe that's a reason landowners like to allow people to hunt, is they might think you might share a little bit of your harvest. I don't know. Sharing the bounty seems like that's popular with hunters and fishers alike. So
Yeah, so just treat them well. And again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and we'll have you on again soon.
awesome, guys. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thanks again for listening to the Radcast Outdoors podcast. We hope that you've enjoyed the show. If so, please go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this podcast and subscribe, share, and give us a 5-star rating, which really helps other people find the show. You can find all of our shows, recipes, giveaways, videos, and much more at radcastoutdoors.com. While you're there, please help support the show by purchasing a Radcast Outdoors shirt or hat. Please don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We also have a Radcast community on Facebook called Radcast Nation, and we'd love for you to join in the conversation there. And of course, please help support our sponsors who make this show possible. Thank you again to PK Lures, Bow Spider, and High Mountain Seasonings. Until next time, get out there and enjoy the outdoors.